really the fact that I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
Was the biggest thing. I felt like, oh, I could do this. I could figure it out. I don't need anybody's help. I'm just going to do it. And as I got into it, and there is a little bit of ego where you do need to go take the action yourself and don't rely on other people to take the action for you to get the result.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to have a team. You have to have the support system there. And so I would say getting rid of my ego and thinking that if I do this alone, I'm going to get all the credit to, hey, I'm going to do this with others and we will get the credit together.
Hey, this is a quick shout out from one of our awesome sponsors. Check this out. Thank you to Tracy down at Tranquil Turtle Massage in downtown Coeur d'Alene. Look, my wife and I, we see Tracy and her team every single month for a couples massage, and it is the best thing. Tracy is a master massage specialist and a Hanu Ashiatsu trainer. You need to reach out to Tracy and her team. Make sure that you tell them that I sent you, and you'll get $25 off your next massage. Also, while you're there, check out CDA Brows, Body, and Ink. Make sure to tell Tracy that I sent you, and you'll save $100 on your next tattoo brows and plasma tightening services.
Philip, you're a husband, you're a father, you're the coach. I'm going to do that all over. Not the coach. That was awesome. All right, here we go. Philip, you're a husband, you're a father, you're a coach, speaker, entrepreneur. You're the founder of Speaking Sessions, podcast host, author, so much more. Welcome back to the show, man. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Eric, glad to be here again. This is exciting.
Come on, dude. I'm going to grab something real quick. I'll cut this part out. This is your book, by the way, and I'll bring it up later on in the interview, but I'll cut that part
Nice.
out. But we chatted back in June of 2022. Pumped to have you back on the show, man. You've been helping me with an upcoming speech, and it's been awesome. And a lot of people struggle with finding their purpose, I would say. Like, how did you discover your passion for speaking and for coaching? And what advice do you have for those like still kind of trying to figure out what their purpose and calling is?
So how this all started was really my desire to create more impact. And so kind of twofold. One, I was doing not doing public speaking coaching. I got into public speaking coaching. Here I am. Ignore this part where I mess up. I was doing fitness coaching.
Okay.
And I could see the impact I could create in one individual's life, and fitness changed my life completely. And this is not to downplay any fitness person, any gym owner, anything like that. But I didn't feel like I could create the impact that I truly could create with fitness coaching like I could if I got into something different. And that ended up being public speaking coaching for me. And just seeing how speaking also changed my life, made me more confident, made me be able to talk to anybody at any rung in the ladder, so to speak, for a corporate world, or even guys that are making 8-9 figures in their business, all the way to just the janitor, like at the bottom of the rung, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I saw speaking change my life, and I wanted to help others, along with going to these business conferences and seeing these guys and girls that are speakers and just how much impact they can create simply in an hour speech. And of course, the cool thing was that we see like the Ed Milet's and Andy Frisella's and Gary V's, and they're making 6 figures and at a minimum just to speak for an hour.
Right.
That's pretty cool too. So there is that upside with the money.
Yeah.
But more important than that, it's the impact. And then me as a speaking coach, as a speaker, I can speak to an audience of 1,000, 10,000, and I can impact people. But as a speaking coach, I can now go help tens, hundreds, thousands of speakers to do the same thing. And so there's this huge ripple effect that can be created. And so that's why I got into public speaking coaching, is I saw just how much impact that I could truly create for people, for themselves, but also for others.
Man, it's huge, dude. I mean, when you're working with folks in your digital courses, your one-on-ones and your group sessions there, what is it that you see most people struggling with? And then how do you walk them through to get more comfortable with public speaking?
The biggest thing outside of the fear of speaking, outside of getting out of their minds, so once they allow themselves not to be inside their head and get past this mental block, the biggest thing is the strategy behind it.
Yeah.
It's very similar with sales, with marketing. Speaking in itself is a business. And a lot of times what I have to go through and help my clients with, and the questions I get and what I really end up answering for people is, where are you trying to go with this speech? The strategy behind it. A lot of times, I want to talk about this topic, or I don't even know what I want to talk about, but I just want to get on stage. Okay, well, that's great. You can go into business doing anything, but if you're just doing whatever, hoping you sell something, nobody's going to know what it is that you do, what you sell, how you help them. So you
Yeah.
have to have that strategy there so people can understand what it is that you do, what you're talking about, so they know how you can help them. And so really that end goal in mind. So a lot of times that's what I have to help people through is that strategy.
Mhm. You've been a huge help for me in kind of outlining my speech and putting that together and things like that. I so appreciate what you're doing and help me to prepare for the speech coming up, man. And I think I'm right about 25 minutes, which is definitely the longest speech that I've ever given. When you're talking with folks and they kind of get up and they're like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I just want to be on the stage." Like, what steps are you taking them through to kind of figure out, okay, what's the content that you should be talking about? Like, what's the mindset that they should be having when they step into that stage there?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And so where I start is again that end in mind.
Mhm.
What do you want your audience to take away from your message? And
Yeah.
so when we can figure out, and I like to think of like an umbrella. So when we can figure out what it is that our overarching theme is, this message that we want, we can put everything underneath that umbrella.
Yeah.
And so we figure out what this theme is, and then we figure out a couple supporting points that we can have for that.
Mhm.
So for instance, we want to get in better shape. We understand that you want to teach people, hey, getting in better shape can change your life. Okay, well, what are three things that we can do or talk about that will help support the fact that getting in better shape can change your life and your family's life?
Yeah.
And then once we have those 3 points, then we add at least a story to each one of those. And because through repetition, people remember repetition. People tend to remember threes as well. So that's why we have the threes, but that's why we have the point and then we have a story with that point because people remember through that repetition. So you're saying it, but then you're sharing a story for that point as well to really solidify what that information is. And a lot of us remember stories a lot better than we do information. So that's really, in a nutshell, that framework that I like to use there
Yeah.
is have your overarching theme, have your 3 main points, and then have 3 stories, one story for each of those points.
You host a monthly webinar series where you're talking people through the mastering the art of speaking. What can folks expect out of this webinar series, and what things are you doing personally as a speaker to grow as a speaker and a coach?
So, what I do personally as a speaker, of course, I'm always trying to get on more stages.
Yeah.
I do lunch and learns here locally so I can get in front of people. Because believe it or not, doing a podcast like this or doing a video virtually is completely different than something in person. And
So-
so I do these lunch and learns to help give me some reps and also build up my local rapport and my local brand. Also, because that's another thing I'll go into that in a second that's important as a speaker and your personal brand and everything. But then I also do podcasts, do that webinar, do videos. I'm always trying to find ways for me to be able to speak. And then also going back and reviewing what it is that I have done and what I can do to be better. Because we all do that. We see things, it's our voice or the way we say something, maybe some lip smacks, we're all the time. And so we know these things that we do wrong, but if we don't go review them, it's hard for us to really realize how bad that is.
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of what I do. But I want to go back real quick just to have a side note here. Why I do these lunch and learns in person or lunch and learn, coffee networking, whatever, these engagements locally that aren't these big conferences like we see that we spend months planning out. We get a bunch of speakers in. It's probably me and one or two other speakers, and we have a couple of sponsors to help sponsor that, is because we build our personal brand that way.
Mhm.
And I found this out the hard way. I decided, you know what, I'm going to throw this small business conference. It's going to be amazing. It was me, the 6 other speakers, and we had a videographer, photographer, and 2 people show up. For this event, I planned for like 3 months.
Wow.
Now, I could have promoted a lot more and done all these other things, but I had a huge online presence for me, at least. I thought it was pretty big, several thousand people that followed me on social media, but none of them showed up, or,
Mhm.
well, none from outside of my area showed up.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized how important having your local network is. And so that's why I do these local events that are smaller that I might plan out a month, maybe 2 months in advance and talk about it a little bit, get some
Yeah.
friends to come in and just try really through word of mouth, getting people involved with that. And that's helped me really build up my local presence and my local brand. So when I do another event, it's not a flop like that. Now, I've learned since then, of course, as well, but that's the big thing and why you want to do these local events. One, so you can be a better speaker because you're doing more events. But two, so when you decide to do an event, if it's not local to you, at least you know how to get people in and you can talk with people, because you've probably seen this through your sales career too, that people tend to not buy from you unless if you directly ask them. And so that's something else with that too. But they also need to know you. They need to know, like, and trust you. And what better way than being right there in front of them, being on a stage? Because being on the stage builds that ultimate authority. It builds authority just like that. Immediately, because you're on that stage, people look at you as the expert in whatever area you're about to speak about.
Come on, man. That's so good, dude. That's so good. I need to get more involved, and I think in more local events here in Coeur d'Alene where I'm at. And, I love being able to connect with local people, but I haven't done any local like podcast meetups. And you just were sparking ideas like, man, I should really be doing it. I know a lot of podcasts in this area. We should just have a free podcast there, session, right? It's so important to get that local buildup because we talk virtually, we connect with people all over the US with podcasting, but when it comes to those local events, we may not be known, right? So important to build that up. And I mean, with you, and I experienced that too when I did like a virtual event a couple years back now, where me and another guy, we hired on, like we got a bunch of really big name speakers to come on, and I was like super excited to have them come on and speak. And we promoted this thing for like 45 days online, all of our social media networks, and I think we had 8 guys show up. And these are big speakers that like probably could have charged us like 10 and 20,000 bucks just to show up and talk for 45 minutes. And I was like crushed. I was like, ugh, really? That's what happens, right? So it's the reality though of not doing enough promoting, not talking about your product enough, right? Not stepping out of your comfort zone, but you learn from those lessons like you did at that event where you had 2 people show up. It's like, okay, what things can I tweak? Man, it's so good about that.
Yeah. And another thing there too, and this comes from more of a marketing side, but even for our speeches, we need to give information. There's definitely too much fluff in the speaking industry. And I see a shift coming where there is going to be more tangible, tactical information that's going to be preferred over the rah-rah, fluffy, motivational, you really don't get anything from my speech, but it sounds really great kind of speakers.
Yeah.
But still, when we're going to market our speech, the thing that most marketers say is you're selling the sizzle, not the steak. And that's what we have to sell. We have to sell the benefits behind, like, oh, the steak, like you're selling that sizzle, like, oh, doesn't it just sound great? It looks delicious, stuff like that. Now, like, hey, it's got so much protein in there, and this is going to help your body do this. Like, that's all great, but people don't care about that as much as how it's going to make them feel, or what's kind of that outcome that they're going to get afterwards. If they can't understand what happens after they spend this money, is it going to be worth their time? Then they're probably not going to come.
Yeah.
And so that kind of goes with free events as well. When people don't pay, they don't really pay attention. And that saying gets so old, and I get so tired of hearing that, because it's like, well, what do? Do you charge like $10,000 for something that really probably only is worth 100, or vice versa, and stuff like that? So that price game is so difficult, but you're really selling the outcome, not what it takes to get the outcome when you're doing these events. And really just kind of any marketing in general, people need to know where you're going, which goes back to what I talked about with the speech, the strategy. It's about, what are the next steps? Where are we going after I get done hearing you speak, versus what is it that you're going to tell me about today? Because that's great, that's information, but we can go on Google and find that information. I need to understand how that information ties into my future self, because I'm here to learn so I can get better and do more, not just learn just to learn. And that's the small, it's such a small thing, but it's a huge disconnect when it comes to speaking or marketing, as we were just talking about for an event.
Yep. Oh man. Yes, massive. And like,
here's a coffee that makes you awake, not woke. Blackout Coffee not only supports conservative values, but they also support troops and first responders. They are true patriots. They are the #1 freshly roasted coffee in America, made from 100% specialty Arabica coffee beans. Bonus, you get free fast shipping. This stuff is amazing. I've never tasted anything with better quality. So go out and get your daily dose of fuel right now at blackoutcoffee.com.
As a speaker and entrepreneurs, like the whole big thing, like, and we should be setting goals, but I think sometimes setting goals can get run down quite a bit, right? But I think it's super important to be able to set goals, write goals. But I think what's even more important is sometimes we have to let go of things to accomplish the goals. What is something that you had to let go of, like specifically maybe a goal or a mindset that led you to where you're at today?
Man, that's a good question. It's hard to think what maybe that one thing was. I would probably overall, really, I would just say ego. I know it seems kind of generic there, but really the fact that I can't do this by myself
Yeah.
was the biggest thing. I felt like, oh, I could do this. I could figure it out. I don't need anybody's help. I'm just going to do it. And as I got into it, and there is a little bit of ego where you do need to go take the action yourself and don't rely on other people to take the action for you to get the result.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to have a team. You have to have the support system there. And so I would say getting rid of my ego and thinking that if I do this alone, I'm going to get all the credit to, hey, I'm going to do this with others and we will get the credit together.
Yeah.
And the funny thing as well, when you set up these events and do these things and you're not the key person, it's kind of like the great connector. The person that connects everybody together is typically the one that people are like, oh, this is the person you need to meet. It's not the people that were connected together, but it's the one that connected them. So same thing for you with getting into speaking, building these stages. It's not necessarily about you being that great speaker. It's about you bringing great speakers to an audience that'll make you that much better.
Man, it's so good. And you have a virtual summit that you do. You do these virtual summits. I had the honor of speaking on one of these events recently, and it was so awesome. In fact, one of the other speakers that spoke that day reached out to me, and now we're doing a show swap. And so he's going to be on my show, and I'm going to be on his show, etc. It's so good. But why did you decide to start doing these kind of virtual summits, and how can folks get involved in that?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, speakingsessions.com/virtual-summit, or if you just go to speakingsessions.com, it'll be at the tab at the top that you can click on that. And so that's the way that you can register. And what we do from there is we try and create themes for each of these virtual summits. And so from there, based on the theme that you fit in, we'll then contact you and say, hey, are you available for this date? Yes or no, and then we'll try and get you in eventually. So it's not a you sign up and we get you in, because we're trying to make them themed instead of having a bunch of random stuff there.
Yeah.
But why I decided to do this is really goes back to what I talked about, how I wanted to get on more stages. I saw what speaking could do for me, and so I want to be able to help other people out. And so this is just a very simple way to be able to give people an opportunity to be able to speak. And then, of course, for me on the back end from a business perspective, so this will give you some ideas, hopefully, for your business out there. If you're listening to this is a lead gen for me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's a very valuable free lead gen for people because it doesn't cost to get on my stage. You get 10 minutes to speak. And now I know that you're interested in speaking. And that's fine if these people never want to work with me. Totally fine. But now I know who's interested. And then as I'm watching these speakers, this is stuff I can use for content later based on how they spoke well, or maybe some things that they could have worked on. And I can use that for myself for content later.
Yeah.
But then also, and this happened with the very first event, somebody afterwards said, hey, can you give me some thoughts on how my speech went? Perfect. I gave some ideas. This person happened to already have a speaking coach, ironically. So it wasn't fruitful from that perspective for me, but still,
Sure.
I was able to give some value. And based on the feedback that I got from people, I was able to use that for content later on down the road. And as I have more offers that come out, these are people I can go back and talk to, or I can rely on later if they were an exceptional speaker to bring them in for an event that I do later. So it's just end up being a really big lead gen for me, but also just an opportunity to be able to allow people to get on a stage, be able to share a message to create the impact.
Mm-hmm. Man, so good. And I never thought about the lead gen process of coming out of you hosting these for events. I mean, what a great way to build up your own email list, your own lead gen list, man. That's huge. I want to jump into your book here. It's so good, by the way. It is Mindset Over Motivation. You talk about one of the things in there that I really thought was really cool was you talk about finding people in your circle.
Hmm.
Can you drop a few tips, for folks that are still struggling to find their people? Like, where do they start?
Going to local events. So if you don't have the money to be able to go to a mastermind or a business conference, I would try and find local events. You can find those on Eventbrite. Just try and ask around to other people maybe that you know. There's definitely different ways. Facebook events, invites. You'll be able to find stuff in your local area and just try and plug in.
Yeah.
And the first event you go to probably will be a flop, and that's okay. But just try and meet as many people as you can when you go there and go have a coffee with them afterwards. Get on a virtual coffee or in person, whichever kind of coffee that you can do to be able to get to know these people a little bit more, because people that go to these type events go to other of these type of events as well. And it's funny, when you're on the inside, it's like, oh, it's so cool, you get to see the same people all the time. But from the outside, a lot of people want to hate on these people. It's like, oh, they're always going to these events and they're all basically just buddy. Well, it's because we realize how difficult it is to be in business, to try and better ourselves, because most people are not trying to better themselves. So I would start with Facebook or Eventbrite in your local area to find events. And then as you talk with these people, ask them, hey, where's some other places that you go here locally for events? Because they're going to know if they're already going to them. If they don't, maybe you just have a buddy now that y'all can find events to go to together from there. But if you do have some money, try and find some masterminds that you can be a part of. I've been a part of several of them, which has really helped me build my circle, which is a lot of what I talk about in that book. As I've leveled myself up, those people around me are also leveling up. And some people do go away because I've moved on past them. They don't want to continue to level up and everything. And so having people that are on that same path as you, they don't necessarily have to be further ahead than you. They don't have to be way behind you either. They don't have to be exactly where you're at. It's really good to have a mix of those, but they just need to be going somewhere and be that support system for you. And so that's what that circle is really all about, a support system for you to bounce your ideas off of and be able to get that help, especially in times when you're feeling a little down. And that actually happened to me. I've got an accountability group. As we're recording this yesterday, it was, man, like 2 o'clock, and I just was feeling beat. I'm like, man, this is just tough. Like, it's just been really tough right now. Work has been slow. And then it was about 6 o'clock that night. All of a sudden, I'm getting a message, a DM on LinkedIn from a facilities manager for a $7 billion manufacturing company. Hey, I see you're really into speaking and you post content all the time. Would love to have a conversation with you and see how maybe you can help me out with some speaking engagements I have coming up. I was like, like, what? I literally just complained to my group a little bit more, venting, like, dude, it's just, I'm being crushed right now. And they gave me some encouragement. And then literally 4 hours, 5 hours later, and I think that's God being there for me, that he just brings somebody in that, and we'll see what happens. We've got the call for Friday. So it was Monday. We set up a call for Friday and we'll see what happens. But I'm like, this is crazy. Really, God put that into existence for me. But I went from being crushed, feeling crushed, putting it out there for my group, and it made me feel better. They built me up, and then of course something great happened. And that doesn't always happen. But having that circle of friends that understand that things happen and can build you up, and because we all go through that, and there's a lot more lows than there are highs, but that circle helps bring you up and helps push you through those lows or those lulls that you're going to have. No matter what, you're going to have them. So having that circle helps you get through that so much quicker.
Yeah, man, God works in funny ways, man. Always brings us things or, people in our lives when we least expect it, right? So important on that. And I've always said, like, find people that are living the life that you want to live and then go get around them, right? But then another thing kind of came to mind about, like, find those people that are living the life that you want to live, but also living that life that you want to live in the same morals and values and alignment that you have, because they could be where you want to be, but maybe they got there not in a moral way, right? And having that strong circle of people that can encourage you when you're down, right? And not be like, oh, just letting it go, right? Like they actually jumped in, took action, and look what happened, man. This guy reaches out to you. Huge, man. So good.
Yeah.
Speaking of books, like, what was a book that impacted you? Whether that's as a dad or a husband or a business person or a speaker, like, what was that one book that you're like, yeah, that book, it really impacted me?
This wasn't one I've really brought up before, but just as you were kind of talking about that one book that's really impacted me recently, and it's funny because it's kind of applied to other areas, is The Five Love Languages.
Oh
And
yeah.
I can't think of who that author is. But that book, while it's obviously about love, it's more about your intimate relationships and realizing that the way that my love language and mine is acts of service, my wife's is quality time.
Mhm.
And so to me, like just sitting there watching TV together or trying to do something just and be in each other's spheres, if you will, where we can see each other, like to me, that's not that valuable. Like I don't feel love that way, but she
Yeah.
does. And so it's something I have to understand and remember in the back of my mind that, hey, that's how she communicates that love. And
Mhm.
so I can't just show her acts of service, even though for me, I'm like, oh man, I'm doing great things. I'm doing the dishes. I'm giving her foot rubs, all this stuff. And these are
Yeah.
great acts of service. And she loves those things, but it doesn't make her feel as loved as if I just spend time with her, if we're just
Right.
sitting there together in the moment.
Mhm.
And so that book, it also translates outside of an intimate relationship like I have with my wife. It goes to friendships like you and I have, or
Yeah.
other people that I have friendships with. And I see the way that they act, and I realize they might like that act of service, or maybe they just want me to have that time with them. And so that was a book that really helped me understand really communication at the end of the day and how to communicate with different people on their level versus my level. So that was a book that really impacted me.
That's a great book, man. And my wife and I, we've read that book as well. I think it's Les and Leslie Parrott. Is that their last name? Something like that. That wrote the book.
That
Um,
sounds kind of familiar, but I'm not sure.
so really funny thing when my wife and I were first married, we were at a church where the authors of the book, Les and Leslie, I forget their last name, they were going to do a live conference at a news studio in Seattle, Washington, where we were at. And they invited, our church invited my wife and I to go. And so we go to this event, and here I'm like, I mean, mid 20s, right? Get into this studio. It's like 90 degrees in this freaking studio. I'm dying of heat, dude. And they put me and my wife right in the front row. And I bet you could probably find it somewhere on the internet. Who's the guy like falling asleep in the middle? That's probably me, like falling asleep in the middle of their session, because it was just like so hot in there. And it was like a 6-hour conference. And I'm like,
Mm,
really, they put me in the front seat, and I'm just like falling asleep the whole time. I'm like slapping myself. Most craziest thing. I'm sure it's out there on the internet somewhere.
yeah, I bet. I mean, that's hilarious.
Oh man, what's coming up next for you, dude? What are you most excited about right now?
So what am I excited about most right now actually is this has kind of to do with business, but not exactly, is hiring a second VA for myself. So a second virtual assistant,
Come on.
because I'm realizing all these tasks going on right now is a bit crazy, a bit overwhelming, and I definitely need some help with a lot of that administrative stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with our baby coming out in March. So, or coming up, she's going to be born in March.
Okay.
So that's coming up very quickly as well. So really having somebody helping with back end stuff, helping out with a lot of administrative tasks is going to be really helpful for me to be able to continue to move that business forward. But from a business perspective, I'm also working on digital courses. So my next digital course and a book, I guess those two
Come on.
things in
Let's
tandem,
go.
a book on speaking, but then I'm going to do another digital course on communication skills. So more business communication. How do we handle different situations in the business, and really helping small business owners understand how to communicate more like a corporation.
Yeah. Come on, man. That's awesome, dude. Philip, it was so good to catch up and have you back on the show, dude. I love what you got going on. Thank you for the help preparing me for my own speech, man. You're absolutely doing an amazing job with helping other people and coaching other people, man. Thank you for your time, dude. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back on. This was so much fun, man. And yeah, coaching you has been really tough. No, just kidding. You've been awesome.
Hey, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast but unsure where to go, you need to go check out erikallenmedia.com. Click on the resources tab there. I will walk you through how to start, launch, and run a podcast. I've recorded over 500 interviews since 2017, and I want to help you launch your podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button so you catch every show when I drop them. Thanks again. Keep changing the world.